Hello, and welcome back to the podcast that must not be named. I am Luke,
I am Melissa.
and we are here doing Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, chapter number 30, The Pensive. This chapter was 24 pages long, and that is 3.2% of this book. Hey, Sly, tell us what happened.
Dumbledore leaves Harry in his office as the three men head to the grounds to inspect the attack site. Harry has a look around and finds a large basin and an unsecured cupboard with a silvery liquid inside. He investigates it and falls in, being transported to a memory of Dumbledore from years ago in what looks like to be a courtroom. Harry watches as Karkaroff is strapped into a chair at the room's center and is questioned by Mr. Crouch, who has agreed to set him free from Azkaban in exchange for the names of other Death Eaters. Karkaroff gives many names, including Snape, but Dumbledore stands up and vouches for Snape, who had left Voldemort and agreed to work as a spy for the good side. The room dissolves and another memory in the same room is taking place. This time it's Ludo Bagman in the hot seat, pleading that he didn't realize he was helping a Voldemort supporter. The audience accepts his plea, but it could be because of his skills in Quidditch. The room dissolves again, and this time the mood is somber as Mr. Crouch's son, along with his cohorts, including a witch named Bellatrix Lestrange, are charged and convicted with torturing Alice and Frank Longbottom with the Cruciatus Curse, and Mr. Crouch sentences his own son to life in Azkaban. The headmaster joins Harry and pulls him out back into his office. He explained that the basin is called a pensive, and it's where he can collect his thoughts that overfill his brain. Harry tells the professor about his dream, which Dumbledore believes was probably true. Voldemort is near and dangerous, and 3 recent disappearances of Bertha Jorkins, Mr. Crouch, and a muggle named Frank Bryce may all be tied to Voldemort. Harry asks about the Longbottoms in the memory, and Dumbledore confirms that they are Neville's parents, who were driven insane because of the curse, and that's why Neville lives with his grandmother. Harry inquires about Bagman and Snape, and Dumbledore answers with conviction that neither has been accused of any dark activity since. After the questions were through, Dumbledore bids Harry a kindly goodbye, and good luck on the 3rd task.
All right, pretty exciting chapter we have here. A lot of new things for us, new people, I know. We had some new character introductions. Melissa, what did you find in this chapter?
So there were quite a few unnamed wizards of a variety of sorts. There were unnamed witches and wizards in the audience. There was a small group of unnamed wizards and witch on the floor. There was a crying witch on the side. Lots of them.
Yeah, seen from above and from below, just all, in the round, if you will.
Truth.
Yeah.
That is true. They were roundish.
We had some referenced characters as well that we hadn't heard of before. Dolohov, Antonin Dolohov, and Evan Rosier. They were some former Death Eaters that have been dealt with, righteous with the law now. So
much to Karkarov's chagrin.
Right. And we did meet a character for the first time. We first time met young Crouch's son and Crouch's wife, unnamed, but they're characters we've heard of before at least.
We know surnames.
Yeah. So other than that, not a whole lot. There were references to the McKinnons again, which we had heard of before. There were references to the Longbottoms, which we had heard of before. Obviously, we have a named Longbottom. So a lot of names thrown out. Only a few that we hadn't heard before, though, which was interesting. We also have... This is, again, kind of one of those kind of a new location. Like, we've never been there, but you could say maybe Harry's technically never been there yet either. In this courtroom, whatever this is...
Can you visit? Does it count to go to a location of a memory?
I mean, yeah. I mean, does it count if you go in your dreams? Right? Like it's hard to say. Does that count?
I mean, we sort of counted it last time, so sure. I say yes.
I say yes, and yes, it shall be.
The eyes have it.
The eyes have it. Yes carries the day.
All right.
What about magicabulary? What did you see here?
So going with my entire podcast history theme of things I struggle to pronounce, I believe this is called a pensieve. At least that's what my brain has always called it. I don't really know if that's what it is.
Well, it's kind of, it's a compound word, and it's between pensive, which is like an emotional state, right? Oh, he's pensive, he's thinking, he's...
But
remembering.
There's more dull in it than pensive.
Right. Well, it's a combination with the word sieve, a sieve, which is like like panning for gold, or sieves like geotechnical engineers use to shake down rocks into different sizes. So it's a compound of, it's a thing. It's
I know.
But
you just had to pull out the engineer.
Well, I mean, that's how I know it in those terms. But it really shakes down to the nitty gritty and sorts things out, which I think is the intent. Is it takes the pensive mentality and sieves through it, kind of pans around, and that's how I've always looked at it. So I can see either way being completely correct. Is my point.
What I'm hearing is I'm not technically wrong yet.
I don't think you're technically wrong at all. No, I think it's completely valid the way you're saying it.
Great. One more win for me.
There you go. Also in this chapter, just like every one of these chapters, we have an illustration. Do you have your book with you?
Okay, so here's the thing.
Okay, I'm going to level with you.
I had a bit of an unusual day, and when I sat down, I have my headphones, I have my microphone, I have my phone, because that goes everywhere. I have my computers. You know what I don't have?
I'm going to guess the book. Well,
but hold on, I'm not done. So I realized this prior to the illustration discussion, and by prior to the illustration discussion, this would be when Luke was introducing the chapter, and the podcast just now started all of 3 minutes ago. So I Google searched it, and I have it pulled up on one of my computer screens.
Oh man, what a professional over here!
It was quite the save.
Let's hear it for Melissa, folks. She's on fire this episode already. So for the kids at home, I will put it up covering Melissa's face on my desktop Kindle. So what we see here looks like Harry looking down pensively into the pensieve. So
it's that or cereal.
What? Sad or cereal?
It's that or cereal.
Yeah. That's a big bowl of cereal. You know, it could be porridge, I guess. So I don't know. He's certainly looking into it, and you can see his reflection a little bit. Not sure.
He's looking into it.
He sure is looking into it.
Figure it out.
I don't know. Any other thoughts?
I don't know. Harry's looking into it.
Harry's looking into it. He'll figure it out. Any thoughts on that illustration there, Melissa?
Nope. It's a kid with a bowl.
It's a kid looking into a bowl.
It is, as illustrations go, massively accurate.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes I'm like, there's a better. Nope. This one, massively accurate.
And kind of boring because of it. For a not really boring chapter, in my opinion. Right.
What did you say? You thought this chapter was boring?
I said not. I don't think this chapter is boring.
Oh, okay. All right. Sorry, I misheard.
That's our jobs here. Make sure you mishear and talk over each
and
other.
Don't pay any attention to what the other person is saying.
All right, Melissa. This is a very, I want to say, breakoutable chapter. There's several specific scenes that we have. There's about 5 total scenes, and I know you went through and set up your notes to kind of go through them scene by scene. And
yeah, I'm kind of amazing. Thanks for noticing.
You did a great job, and I'm glad to be in this team with you. So, without further ado, our first scene is before the pensieve. And what's your first note here?
Okay, so this is where Harry had been at the door and would he come in? So kind of the first thing Harry does is directly address Fudge's misconceptions about Madame Maxime. Mm-hmm. We talked a lot about that in the last chapter, so I don't want to delve too deep into that. There's cooler stuff to get to. I just like that he was pretty blatant up front. Yeah, so I heard that that's not happened because you can't miss her. It was just nice that he didn't do the typical Harry thing of sort of shutting down and not, having that difficult conversation. He just put it out there. Yeah, nope, she didn't do it.
And she'd have a job hiding, wouldn't she? Which is a bit of a, maybe insensitive thing to say, but I like the tone that he
not
took.
Inaccurate.
Yeah, I agree, and that's just it's just true.
Right.
Another thing, right when he walks into the room, he's greeted by a couple of old friends, almost, right? He's looking around and he sees Fox and kind of gives him the sup bird, what's up, Phoenix? Hey man, how you been?
Yep.
You molting any lately? And also the Sorting Hat was in the room, and Godric Gryffindor's sword was in there. It was just kind of a neat little, hey, these are things that would just be there because that's where they're being. And
And we didn't forget about them being there.
exactly. And I don't know, I like those nice little touches of like, hey, they probably haven't really moved other than like the times that they, like the sword at least, it really hasn't been probably moved. It's probably just sat there since Harry got it. Fox has probably moved, it's a living thing. We know that the sorting hat's been used twice since then, but you get my point.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Another quick thing that happens here is Harry kind of mentions, his inner monologue mentions, that he felt a lot more calm as soon as he was, like, he knew that he was safe in Dumbledore's office. And I don't know, it's just a nice thing for Harry to have because his life is such a crazy amalgamation of action all the time, and it just says he felt much calmer somehow now that he was in Dumbledore's office, knowing he would shortly be telling him about the dream. Harry looked up at the walls behind the desk. The patched and ragged sorting hat was standing on a shelf. So I don't know, it was just a nice little touch of Harry feels safe here, and he should. I mean, where else would be safer than this possibly? And aside from maybe right with Dumbledore, wherever he's at. So nice little touch, I thought. What else did you see in this portion here?
So the end of this little section, I have a very slight little bone to pick with Harry. Here's the problem. Without this, the rest of the chapter wouldn't happen. So, okay, nice. Okay, so Harry is kind of a nosy Nelly, right? And he can't leave Pensive alone. All I could do when I was reading this chapter, okay, so Finding Nemo, the scene where Dory finds the baby jellyfish, she's like, I want to touch it. And she's like, oh, bad jellyfish.
Yeah.
Like, that's Harry with the Pensive.
Yeah.
Don't, it'll hurt you.
It very much reminds me of A Bug's Life with the flies going into the fly light. And Bertie, don't go into the light. I can't help it. It's so beautiful. I
just watched that movie the other day.
That's a great movie. I've kind of forgotten about, I think, sometimes, but in the world of Pixar, but wonderful movie. That's very much how I feel about it. He almost has no chance of avoiding it. Once that glimmer of silver light comes out, he's going, right?
Like, it doesn't say that it's accompanied by its own background music. But you kind of imagine that it's accompanied by its own background music.
He's on casters and he's just being pulled to it.
You see like the choir of angels in the background. One kind of coughs a little bit. No.
Yeah, no, I definitely think
Monty
so.
Python, different. I'm going down a different path.
We'll get there eventually. I do really like the way like the Pensive itself is described. And the liquid inside, or whatever it is, it says, he could not tell whether the substance was liquid or gas. It was a bright, whitish silver, and it was moving ceaselessly. The surface of it became ruffled like water beneath wind, and then, like clouds, separated and swirled smoothly. It looked like light made liquid, or like wind made solid. Harry couldn't make up his mind. And I really enjoy the playing with physical matter that JK does here in describing that. Yeah, I mean, it's so not normal that it is absolutely magical. Like, there's no doubt about it because it just physically doesn't make sense in Harry's head as to what it is. That's just a cool way of her kind of showing that by telling us. So anything else before Harry goes ahead and doesn't do like he thinks,
goes ahead
and literally goes head first into this thing, which I think it's interesting that he gets kind of pulled in, right? He gets so close that he touches his nose to the water and it sucks him in. Dangerous stuff.
That is like, can you get stuck in there? Are you actually in there, or is it just like a mental thing? Like, is your body still outside? I have questions, but it's high flighty things that I don't really want to get into. It's just confusing.
Yeah, maybe a must not tell lies episode in the future.
Yeah, sure. Sounds good.
All right, so let's talk about Igor Karkaroff's trial. What did you see here?
So really, like, self-preservation is a strong character trait of Karkaroff. This is what I'm getting, that his number one character trait is protect me.
Yep.
Save me. Pick the winning side and get on it.
Pretty much. Yeah, and sell out whoever you have to save yourself. And that's I don't know. Interesting characteristic to be qualified
I
with.
mean, it worked out for the guy.
Clearly, he became headmaster, right?
Right.
Seems to be
I mean,
fairly
and
prestigious.
we're only
12
talking
years
within
ago?
like,
I mean,
yeah, 12 years. Like, I've been teaching for longer than that, and I'm not a headmaster anywhere. So
mhm.
that's a pretty big shift.
Yeah, maybe there's a little bit more to that talk that Malfoy had about learning dark arts at Durmstrang, being a little more open to those things instead of just practicing that defense rubbish. So another
Oh, Malfoy.
thing that I really thought was interesting here in Karkaroff's trial is obviously when Harry gets in there, he kind of recognizes, I'd say fairly quickly, that this is very similar to when he was in Tom Riddle's diary. He was in somebody else's memory, and they can't see him, but he can see them. And he has the Dumbledore wouldn't ignore me like that kind of thing. Another person he sees that he recognizes right away is Mad-Eye Moody. And he still had both of his eyes. And I thought he was pretty funny here. Like, just really not impressed with Karkaroff. I mean, he even, like, I'm sure he's happy that they might catch a few more Death Eaters or whatever, but at the same time, like, his certain set of values is still bothered by this lack of loyalty, almost. He's like, oh, you scum. Like, that's why, especially when Karkaroff was talking, like, about how Voldemort never let everyone besides him know who all of his supporters were, and Moody's like, yeah, because some idiot like you would sell them all out. Like, it was smart. Like, it's very pragmatic of Moody, and I liked him in this chapter a bit.
I did too. I had a question about his nose.
Mm-hmm.
So it says that Rosier, whoever he was, took a chunk from Moody's nose, right?
Yep.
How? So I asked that because I always assumed it was like a bite,
Oh, really?
a chunk out of his nose, right?
Sure.
But then I realized, like, hi, they have magic.
Yeah. There's
Maybe
like,
it's a curse? I don't really know. So what do you think?
I have always thought cursed part of, some kind of aggressive attack type spell, which we really haven't seen much other than like the killing curse. That's like the only damaging spell we've really seen, other than like silly hexes and things like that. Like, but yeah, I would think that there's, when you really start getting into the quote unquote capital D dark arts, that there are much more physically damaging type spells that exist.
I want to learn those. Not to do them. Just to know them.
Mm-hmm.
The theory of it.
Purely academic, of course.
It's very Ravenclaw of me. I want to know all the things.
I'm here to learn all of the things. Excuse me, can you teach me?
Right. And I believe you are filtering what some of those things are. And I should be able to judge for myself if a thing is good or bad once I've learned it.
Right. Another quick thing I kind of liked with Moody here is the kind of peer relationship that he and Dumbledore have. I mean, obviously they don't see eye to eye about the Dementors, but they're sitting right next to each other each time, right? At least a couple of them. And so it seems like they definitely got on, right? And it's just nice to see, I don't know, two pretty powerful wizards as far as we can tell, just chit-chatting more than anything, like church talking, like while something else is going on. I don't know.
Man, they just need a mom to reach over and like squeeze their knee really hard because they should not be talking right now.
That would be Crouch. If he wasn't the one giving the speech, he would be the one pinching the leg. We know. That's the face right there.
Yes.
Some other pretty interesting information that comes out is straight up definitive proof that Snape was in fact a Death Eater. I know we've kind of speculated at that of, like, is he really just a jerk? Like, how far does it go? And I don't know. What are your thoughts on learning that Snape truly was in with Voldemort at one point?
It's nice to know that Harry's not wrong about Snape all the time.
Yeah.
That's about where I'm going to leave it right now.
Yeah. Certainly an interesting bit of information.
I think it's any information you can have against Snape is good information.
Mm-hmm. Because he's the worst. And we have our next scene here. So the memory kind of goes its full course, I guess, for its usefulness. At least from in this chapter we learn these are Dumbledore's thoughts. I don't think that's a spoiler because it's this chapter, but
Right.
basically that's the end of what Albus believes is relevant to remember in this film reel or whatever however this works. And it kind of fades into the next one where Harry finds himself in the same room, and this time it's Bartemius Crouch. Sorry,
No.
Ludo Bagman.
I mean,
it
technically
is
Crouch is in all
still
of them.
Bartemius Crouch. It is Ludo Bagman gets brought in, and you have a few notes here.
I do.
See.
So the first is just like we see a younger Rita Skeeter, so I assume this is what she knows about Ludo, that he once passed information knowingly or unknowingly to a known Death Eater or a revealed Death Eater, I guess. So that's her. That would be my guess of her big dirt. You think there could be anything else?
To me, this seems like a pretty big one. I mean, if you were brought in for suspicion like this before, I mean that seems like a pretty big bullet in your chamber, especially if this was kind of hushed up in the news or whatever
Right.
after the fact. Like,
well, especially talking to 14-year-old kids who were 2 at the time and wouldn't have known.
Right. Because I'm sure that's like so this famous guy was brought in on charges on a thing, and it didn't ever go anywhere. It's
And
not
he
really
was
newsworthy.
in a car
moving forward.
chase in
Right.
a white Bronco.
White Bronco.
That we ordered pizza to watch.
I think that was the
Whatever.
first time I ever remember eating dinner in the living room.
Anyway, my kids would have no idea what we're talking about, so they would need
Absolutely.
like the context
Right.
of something like that. So I that's what I think. I think that's fine.
Yeah.
Probably
so.
her spiel there.
Yep.
I definitely think Bagman can give Lockhart a run for his money for the title of most annoying celebrity in the wizarding world.
I firmly
I'm not saying
disagree.
he would beat Lockhart. I'm saying he would be in competition.
I don't know. I think we really see Bagman differently.
Probably.
And that's fine.
How do you see Bagman?
Well, let's get into your next note. I think that kind of opens up a big disparity in how we think of him. It's
So-
what I'm thinking.
Okay, here's the thing. We can all agree that Lockhart has a collection of annoying qualities as the celebrity, that they are almost solely celebrity-based annoying qualities, I should say, right?
I don't agree with that.
You don't think his annoying qualities are all based around the fact that it's due to his seeking of celebrity?
No, I don't think he's seeking celebrity. I think he's a bit of an idiot, like he specifically says, and I think he is good at a sport. I don't think he goes out seeking celebrity.
You're not with me. I'm talking about Lockhart.
Lockhart, yes, absolutely.
What do you mean?
I'm back.
Okay.
My computer screen went black again. I'm here.
Okay. Lockhart has almost an overabundance of annoying qualities and habits due to his celebrity.
Yes.
I am not saying that Bagman is an annoying celebrity. I am simply annoyed at how his celebrity prevents a possible accurate carrying of justice because of people's preconceived notions about said celebrity, and that makes him very annoying. And I feel like this is a perfect example, Bagman, I mean, of how entitlement and power follow celebrities, because we see the room being very serious and very like a strong sense of decorum, right?
Mhm.
For all the others, right or wrong. And even Karkaroff, like his was, yes, I've done this and I admit it, but like I'm trying to make a deal. It wasn't like he was fully on trial. They were still very decorous. Whereas with Bagman, simply because he was famous for being able to hit a ball, I'm just saying, it was all like, oh no, it can't be him, except it totally could. I'm not saying I think Bagman really truly knew what he was doing. I'm saying nobody, like the carriage of justice wasn't done accurately simply because of his celebrity. And that's the entitled piece that bothers me so much about this.
So I agree that certainly is something to talk about, and it
That's why
very
I am.
much, well, it very much is a valid point, but I do think there's more to it in the fact that he's not playing up the celebrity card to get that. And I know that's not what your point is. I know that.
Okay.
I guess the main thing I take from it, and the thing that stands out to me most, is I think it's equally or more so this portion of this chapter is to set to show how ruthless Crouch has become with this power that he has. Because, yeah, he's a celebrity, yeah, he's a famous athlete, but just seeing the jovial nature of everyone there, where they just absolutely think this is a bogus thing that Crouch is on this, for lack of a better term, witch hunt, trying to find anybody and everybody. I think that's the way I've always read it. I'm not saying the celebrity portion and entitlement absolutely don't still apply. I just look at it more of Crouch as being put on this pedestal of, this is getting out of hand. And even the people who are here in this room who have shown that sense of decorum, like you were mentioning, in the other two trials that we see, are like, this is absolutely ridiculous. And that plays into, sure, why they think that just from their preconceived notions of Bagman, but I don't know. What evidence was he brought in on other than he just was chatting, he was talking? I don't know.
But that's the problem. Okay, so I'm going to disagree with you on 2 points. The first one is, you said, oh, this is Crouch, like, sort of becoming more ruthless and attacking, and that's what the audience was sort of fighting against. And I don't agree with that at all, because I think he was even more ruthless in the next trial. Nobody said a word to him about that.
But there's also direct evidence of, I mean, at least as far as we can tell, I think it completely changes the circumstances.
But I don't think, I mean, I agree that you kind of see like an uptick in his, I want to use the word authority, but that's not the right word. An uptick in his righteousness, authoritarian righteousness, if you will. Well, I'm right. And I agree with you. Like he's getting a little out of hand with his power level. But I don't know what the evidence is against him. I don't know what we know about him, because everybody else was so determined that Bagman was innocent. There was like, it just was too, not that guy. And I know, I get it. You're saying like, it's really more about Crouch and not about the other people. My problem is that this is what we see in the world. These are the things that happen when celebrities get caught for things. And even today, even after all the things that have happened, and this person here and this person there, Harvey Weinstein only got off with probation and a fine. So I'm just saying, entitlement and power of celebrity, that's not going to happen to a random guy on the street. That's not going to, like, it's just not.
I am not disagreeing with that point, that happens. I think it's also happening here to a point, but I don't think that's the only thing that's going on. To me, it feels like there has been another sit down, a proof, a preliminary trial that goes on, because to me this seems like they're jumping straight to the sentencing. They're not talking here. They've already done that, is what it sounds like. And by the way, they discuss, I already told you, I didn't know, I thought he was just a friend of my dad's. He was trying to get me a job here. They've already discussed this, at least at length, at some point. So I don't look at this as being the actual trial.
Like, I got the impression that was during like almost the interrogation piece. You know what I mean? Like with the police or with Crouch, but not with everybody else. I think they were just like, nah, it's this.
I don't know. I guess maybe that's a big discrepancy that we don't know in the way we view this, because I look at this more as the sentencing rather than the portrayal of evidence. And to me, it seems like they've already done that. But it wasn't a sentencing.
It was a verdict of guilt or not guilt.
Right. That's what I was talking about. Well,
I'm just saying.
Specifically, the judgment. How about that? To me, they're coming in to vote for the judgment, which then would lead to the sentencing, if it applies. But to me, it sounds like they've already gone through the litigation portion, and Crouch is the only one that believes that.
And I don't know how much, I don't know how much the other people in the room were able to remove themselves from their preconceived notion of this wonderful Quidditch player celebrity.
Completely fair.
And I think when this was written, that wasn't a big, like, that wasn't, nobody thought about that.
It was talked about. It was
not enough for it to be a consideration maybe in the book. But I think it's just something that I think is important to continue to bring up, that this is how the world works. Celebrity has more power than your average person.
Power is power. So let's go ahead and roll into our final trial scene, where we have young baby Crouch brought in with 3 potential cohorts. He seems to disagree, but
it was a group.
Yeah, a group of 4 are brought in for their judgment and sentencing in this case. But
Yeah.
what were your big takeaways here?
So the other three people, whoever they are, either by their silence because some didn't speak at all, or by the outburst, there was an outburst, really seemed to take ownership of the long bottom attack. They didn't deny it. They didn't, in fact, like kind of lived up to it. It was just they sort of sat there and owned it. Whereas like Crouch Jr., it wasn't me. I didn't do it. Dad, you gotta like the other three didn't. They just, it seemed like by their lack of fighting against, it was like, yeah, or at least
Yep.
I'm not going to deny it.
Oh, there's no denial. I mean, and they even talk about whoever this heavy-lidded woman was. Yeah, it certainly seems like a total admission of guilt, and this unnamed woman really just gloats about it. Really, she says that they're going to be, respected and loved by Voldemort more than anybody because they actually try to go out and find him. And that's
nobody else is going to do a thing.
Right. So we've seen three incredibly different trials and reactions to being on trial, where we have, the snitch from Karkaroff trying to tell everybody, get everyone else in trouble so he can be let out. We have Bagman, who certainly has a celebrity thing going here, which eases his way of getting out. And we have two different displays of one, nonchalance, yep, we did it, happy to do it again. And the fourth, which would be Crouch's son, going basically totally ballistic, screaming, crying, begging, kind of runs the full gamut of, pleading and trying to just get out of it by groveling. There's a lot of words that apply for what he's doing. What do you think on Crouch's son here?
Oh, what a whiny little baby.
Right.
Like, either you did it, so like be a man and own it, or you didn't do it and like have a rational way of pleading your case.
Mm-hmm.
But you sound like a baby.
Yeah, that's a little extreme.
How babies talk.
But
that's all.
I mean, if he's innocent, talk about really getting the shaft, and maybe the complete reverse of what Bagman got. Maybe he's wrong place, wrong time, and just being thrown in as maybe his recognition as being Crouch's son is almost going against him here. Mm-hmm. Because, I don't know, like if you're in such a precarious thing and you can't talk your way out of it, your name being known sometimes doesn't help you either, I think.
Well, especially when your dad is like the guy, right? Your dad's the guy, and most likely he's just angry and embarrassed that this happened at all. So he's gonna throw the book at you to make a example out of you, right? Like,
yeah.
There's just a lot of bias going on in this chapter. It's a lot of subjective justice and not the objective.
Right. And again, I feel like there's stuff going on before these judgments. I mean, they're not just walking in and saying. Right. So that's, I think, a part, because all three of them were kind of like that. Like, there's been a lot of discussion before this, which again I think just kind of colored my view on the Bagman thing a bit. But I completely concede your point on the Bagman side, and I don't know. It's really interesting how in just a few short pages, J.K. Rowling has covered so many different types of reactions to. I mean, we don't know if any of them have done much, really, aside from Karkaroff and these other three who are just owning it. Like, it's just really cool the way that she works that many different situations into such a short number of pages. It's kind of montage, if you will.
Yeah.
So he gets sentenced along with the other three to, sounds like, just, you're going away, and that's going to be it. And we also find out that the real, I guess, current timeline, Albus Dumbledore, is right there with Harry and basically says, okay, it's time to go. I really like that Albus lets Harry see. He doesn't jump in and pull him out and say, like, what are you doing here? He said calmly. And, like, I wonder how long Dumbledore was standing there. Like, was he there at one of the earlier ones too and just was like, well, Harry should see these things? Or did he just get there and just kind of let that final scene play out? What do you think?
I don't know if he was there for all of the scenes, but I think he was there long enough to be like, well, he's here. Let's let him
Right.
finish it. Because let's go back to book 1, right? I think Dumbledore gives us just enough to see if we can do it on our own. And like Dumbledore sees this and is like, yep, I'm going to give this to him. I'm
Right.
going to let him know.
It will
And I'm
only
fine with that.
become more of an issue if he has partial information, kind of thing.
Exactly.
Is the way I would see Albus looking at that.
Mhm.
So they come out of the pensive, and a couple good one-liners here. I know we both highlighted a similar ones. I'll let you go ahead and read it.
All right. So basically, like, Dumbledore's asking, hey, what's going on? You wanted to see me. And Harry goes, I was in divination just now and I fell asleep. Quite understandable. Continue. I like
Yeah.
that. Like, no need to justify. I believe you. I'm with you. Go on.
Yeah, and he completely validates him. He doesn't make him feel guilty about that. He's just like, yeah, that makes sense. We're good. That's not important. Like, there wasn't. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was going to say, I do think it's interesting that Neville has never really broached the subject of his parents.
Mm-hmm.
Because I remember when reading this chapter the first time going, I never even thought to ask.
Mm-hmm.
And then I felt guilty that I never wondered about this fictional character's parents, a fictional secondary character's parents, and I felt bad.
Yeah, no, and that's, I think, the point. Because, I mean, I would say a high percentage of people felt the same way when you read there. Like, you feel just like Harry, like, wow, I didn't even consider. Because most people truly just aren't that considerate, and I don't mean that as like oh wow, we're all so awful. It's hard to get out of your own purview. Sorry.
Humans are by nature selfish, and not necessarily a bad way. It's just what is in our lane, in our perspective. That's the thing that we're thinking about, but it doesn't directly impact our lane.
Right.
It becomes less of an importance to us.
Yep, I think that's definitely true. So Dumbledore kind of goes through a little bit of how the pensieve works, which looks really awesome. I don't want to dwell on that too much. Yeah. We'll maybe talk about that more as life goes on. But something I really wanted to bring up was the description that Harry seems to be thinking. He realizes Dumbledore looks old for like the first time to him. He says, the silvery light from the pensieve illuminated Dumbledore's face, and it struck Harry suddenly how very old he was looking. He knew, of course, that Dumbledore was getting on in years, but somehow he never really thought of Dumbledore as an old man. So this is kind of after they discuss how the pensieve works, and Harry sees a couple more quick examples of Snape and Albus talking, and also kind of a discussion with young Bertha Jorkins, which is really interesting because it's almost like this is weighing on Dumbledore. You know, all of these things that are going on, and I'm sure he's carrying a lot of emotional weight behind, whatever is going on, and he just keeps it so tight up close that...
Yeah, Dumbledore looked old to Harry. I thought that was interesting. He talks about how Voldemort and Harry were connected by the scar, which I thought was also interesting. We get a little bit more information on why Harry can see these things, why he's always had these weird feelings, why his scar hurts sometimes, and it's just a theory, but we've seen Albus be pretty smart about things, and at least he's not saying, yeah, this is definitely what it is. He's being pretty honest about it, right? The Dunning-Kruger. I know a lot, which means I probably don't know everything. So
I know enough to know that I don't know.
Well, the imposter syndrome, sorry. The reverse of the Dunning-Kruger. So, good for him. And we have another good Albus moment when he brings up Frank Bryce. Albus goes through and reads the Muggle news as well, and my boy Frank Bryce gets another shout out here. I just thought that was good of Dumbledore to not only value the Wizarding World's news, and he sees the value in, I guess, more of a global perspective, and especially the local non-Wizarding world. I mean, that's not far out, so I thought it was cool to have Frank Bryce be mentioned again.
Yeah, I'm with you. I agree. It shows, it kind of goes with my theme of like things are happening because of a set of biases that different people have, and I like that Dumbledore is trying really hard to work against that.
Dire Poe.
I know.
All right, since I don't have my music on this computer, classic claps. All right, let's get into your 5 burning questions.
Question 1. Would you have looked in the pensive?
Absolutely. Sure. Why not?
I would have looked. I don't think my face would have gotten that close.
Yeah, I don't know if he had much of a choice on that. It almost seemed like he was almost like bewitched and enchanted.
Okay.
So I feel like once he sees it, he's toast. So I'd probably be toast.
Okay. All right. Question 2. Why didn't Sirius tell Harry about being in contact with Dumbledore? Or was this like naivete on Harry's part?
Yeah, it's kind of a tough one. Like, Harry probably should have thought more than himself in contact with Sirius. Like, Albus certainly knew what Sirius was up to. I mean, Dumbledore is the reason that Sirius was helped escape anyway, or at least thwart execution. So I don't think it's very surprising that Sirius and Dumbledore are in contact. I also don't think it's really that important for Sirius to tell Harry. I don't know. What do you think?
I don't think it's important for Sirius to tell Harry, and I think it's very typical for a kid to not think outside of their own needs, right? My teachers don't go home. My teachers live at school. What do you mean I'm safe at the grocery store? What do you mean my godfather talks to other people? He's just my godfather. Yeah, I think it's that same kind of thing. So I'm not surprised by it at all.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, question 3. Is Karkaroff telling the truth that Voldemort kept his followers secret from one another? Or is that a lie he is telling to protect himself? Because, self-preservation.
I bet that's probably true. I bet there were, maybe not everybody, but there's probably, a certain group that everyone sees, at the meetings, the Death Eater Weekly, everyone gets up and says, Hail Dark Lord, and they all know each other.
So it's like the officers are listed on there, but none of the members are listed in the Dark Wizard Weekly journal, so you don't know who the other ones are who receive it.
Yeah, that could definitely be.
It's the president and the treasurer and the editor, but you don't get like all the other just piddly booster club dark members.
We do know that they wear masks, at least when they were out in public. That doesn't mean they wear them in their private meetings or anything, but maybe they do. And maybe that is to keep up this anonymity between each other so that even they don't know who to trust, and that keeps them more loyal to Voldemort because they don't know who's who. It's kind of the same issue. As much confusion as there is, chaos is a ladder, right? And Voldemort is all about chaos, so...
Ugh. Okay, yeah. All right, here we go. Number 4. What is Snape talking about when he says it's coming back? Karkaroff's 2, stronger than ever.
I don't know. We the only information we have between Snape and Karkaroff, other than Karkaroff trying to out Snape, they're both Death Eaters at one point, is whatever Karkaroff showed Snape on his arm back at the Yule Ball. After the Yule Ball, he says it's getting darker, and it seems like there's been a couple times where Karkaroff tried to corner Snape after classes. So I think it's whatever that is, but at this point we don't really know what that is. You got any ideas?
I don't really know. Maybe it's the thing from the ball, but I don't really have any ideas myself.
Okay.
Are you ready for question number 5?
Sure am.
All right, here we go. What evidence did Dumbledore give on Snape's behalf?
What evidence did he give on Snape's behalf?
He specifically says, I have already given evidence.
Right. Maybe Snape's...
What more art thou evidence?
Maybe Snape has been under the Imperius Curse from Dumbledore since then. He captured him. He says, no. I've had him Imperius for months now.
He's mine.
We're good. I've got my tentacles into him.
Oh, I've got my sights set on that one.
Right.
I guess.
I don't know. What do you think?
I don't really know. Maybe it's like I really have no idea, because what could you possibly say to prove that he's not a jerk and working for the bad guy? Because as far as we've seen, according to you, Snape is the worst. So I don't really have any evidence for him not being the worst.
Yeah, I agree. Because he is.
Like I said, you think that.
And therefore I'm right. I think, therefore I'm right. That's awful. That's a really bad quote.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of people in the world who think that.
I agree. A lot of people do think that. I do not. I was being facetious. All right, Melissa, let's get into our chapter superlatives. What was your favorite line?
It's more of a favorite phrase.
Uh-huh.
It's in the middle of a sentence, and it's just the phrase Dumbledore has of "before you got lost in my thoughts."
That's a
I
great
just like
one.
that. It always catching me because it's a play on the phrase of "oh, I got lost in my thoughts." No, 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 you got lost in my thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
I just like that quick. It's a quick wit of play on words, and I like it.
Flipping an idiom. Yeah, I always like wordplay, and that's one that's definitely stuck out to me as well. So I'm glad you checked that one off. My favorite line comes from Dumbledore as well, and he says, "Curiosity is not a sin," he said, "but we should exercise caution with our curiosity." Yes, indeed. So very contemplative, very good idea. You know, curiosity killed the cat, and guess what? Albus believes you need to make sure you keep that cat on a leash, at least well enough. So don't stay away from curiosity. It's certainly a good thing, but just be careful with it. And I know we even questioned, like, Harry, why'd you put your face in it? Like, that's a little questionable. Like,
right?
Maybe a little overboard. So with that, who was your chapter MVP?
I don't really think it will surprise anyone. It was really Dumbledore. He was the only actual other character other than like the brief Fudge Moody thing at the very beginning. But for the most part, everybody else was just memories. So do they count? And maybe they do. But I think Dumbledore did a really good job of guiding Harry and understanding what he saw without judging that he saw it, and had some good one-liners.
I completely agree with you. I think that is the correct choice. And I will give my honorable mention to Mad-Eye Moody, mostly for the memory portion where he kind of calls out Karkaroff, and I just thought that was a neat little scene between him and Dumbledore. So that's kind of it. The only one that really does anything else that's interesting. I could say maybe Bagman for being an idiot, but that's. I feel like you're gonna punch me in the face if that happens. You were literally trying to punch me in the face. So
no, I'm not punching. It's a stamp of disapproval.
Okay, that is fair.
Okay. So if you're joining us live on YouTube, we want to say thank you for catching our live stream, glitches and all.
Live streams.
If you would like what?
Live streams, all 4 of them.
That's right. Oof. We are appreciative of your hanging with us.
Your patience, your stick-to-itness.
If you would like to be notified of any of our live streams, which happen at the most random and inopportune and unannounced times, that always goes out on Twitter a good 5 to 7 minutes before it happens. So make sure you follow us on Twitter at Not Named Podcast. Also subscribe and rate on YouTube itself, and hit that like and notification bell, because that'll notify you when we're on live as well. Otherwise, you can send us your digital owls at notnamedpodcasts@gmail.com. You can also find this show and all of our shows at thepodcastthat.com, where you can find the links to this show along with the podcast that drinks and knows things, our Game of Thrones show, which just wrapped up after the last season ended. So some breathing time now. We have the podcast that floats down here, where Luke and I and our brother Benj are getting really close to wrapping up Stephen King's It, and our newest show, which has recently added our next couple of episodes, the podcast that fights and F-words.
Very long awaited and few and far between, but it's still going.
We put out the first episode a good 6-ish months ago, and we appreciate all of the comments you've had. Episode 2 is finally live, with episode 3 coming right down the pike.
Yep.
So check it out. It is our Outlander show starring our sister Abby and Joe and then Bailey. So join them on that.
Subscribe, rate, and leave comments on iTunes and here on YouTube. If you're watching live, like Melissa said, hit that notification bell when you subscribe on YouTube so that you are told, you get the little heads up whenever we go live or when a new video goes up as well. If you want to listen to this show as a podcast and you never have, go ahead and download the Radio Public app. Listen to our show on Radio Public. It is free to use, their app, and it really does help listeners like you find and support shows like ours. They do a really wonderful job of giving us financial backup for people listening to our show on their app. So if you could do that, we truly, truly appreciate it. When you listen to our show on Radio Public's Android or iOS app, everyone benefits.
Join us next time for our 5-chap recap.
5-chap recap. And also, of course, the unrestricted section, which will be live first on Patreon. for patrons only, but then will become public access also on Patreon. So go there, check it out. It will be live a few days after the main episode is patron only. So until then, stay imaginary.
Thanks.